Okay, this is my sixth and final attempt at trying to do a video, or almost like a movie review really, on a movie called The Innocents, the original black and white version of a movie called The Innocents. This is the best version, the only one worth looking at really, in my way of looking at it. It's simply put, you can't get lost, you can't get confused. The story is clear, even at a superficial level. You know, I would have liked this movie 10 years ago as a film buff. Now I see it as a potential reality. Whereas then I would have just seen it as one of the best movies of its genre. In other words, like a ghost story movie. But at any rate, I mustn't waste the space because I haven't got any. Now look, within the first 5 minutes of this movie, after the titles, you have the wealthy gentleman that owns this mansion, country house, and much, much more, speaking to a potential governess that he wants to look after his children. So he's interviewing her, even though he has already decided from the minute he lays eyes on her that he wants her, right or wrong, to move into this mansion and look after Flora and Miles, the two very young children that he can't and doesn't want to take care of, because he's a businessman and doesn't want to live with them or have anything to do with them. Now, he's looking for a carer, someone who will love and and keep the children happy. And this main character in the movie, who is the governess, apart from the two children, says, you know, in her credentials, I love children and I want to make the children happy. Now, his first question to her, even though he's already decided that the job is hers, in fact, he has to convince her to take the job because she's never done it before. So it's up to her in this interview, whereas in a normal interview it would be the other way around, The first question he asks her, which is a really good question, he says, do you have imagination? Do you have imagination? And she says, yes, I think I do. Yes, I have imagination. And he says, good. Good that you have imagination, because truth is very seldom understood by anyone except those who have imagination. I think that is a very good line, because, like as I see things now, I would say that because we're human beings, we have imagination, or should have imagination, provided it's not too suppressed and we're not too bamboozled by the matrix artificial world around us. And hey, I'm supposed to be going back to this movie because this movie is set long before the technology we appear to have today. But this movie still goes into the imagination. Yes, it still goes away from the reality. It just doesn't go into the technical fantasy reality now, but it does still go into the reality that what you think you see and that what you think is real is not always what you think. But at any rate, that line really certainly rings a bell for me anyway. And look, the idea, truth, is very seldom understood by anyone except someone that has imagination. Truth is very seldom understood by anyone that doesn't have imagination. Or his better way of putting it, truth is seldom understood by any except those that have imagination or possess imagination. You would think that most people would have imagination, and why do you need imagination to see truth? Yes, you do. Because truth is not always as obvious. Truth is not always clear. Truth is not always what you see in front of you. You get bamboozled by the illusion of the reality. And this movie presents this idea quite clearly. And that's why that was the very first question he asked. Even though he asked it in the context of him saying the truth, that he thought that he was that yes, am I not a cold, selfish man to not want to look after these two children? Because he's like, that is the truth. Because yes, you have to you have to extend yourself to understand what is the truth sometimes. You have to think about it a bit instead of just quickly taking what you're told at superficial value and saying, oh yes, that is the case. It's not a question of saying, oh yes, I'm selfish not to want to take care of the two children. I don't like children, so therefore, is that selfish? They're not really my children. I've been burdened with them accidentally because their parents are dead, that sort of thing. So is it selfish that's not my character? And she's there. Look, the answer to that is no, it's not selfish, but it's honest. It's honest, but not selfish. Because but either way, I've gone off, haven't I? Yeah, see, the movie gets me. It is worth looking at. I would say have a look at it if you can. Now, I'm trying to get back on track here. Yes, truth is, do you have imagination? I think I do. Good, because truth is seldom understood by any except those that have imagination. Okay. She had imagination because when she was presented, this is the movie is, I know I'm going to bungle this one up, and I didn't want to because I think the movie is good and the ideas and the theme. But this movie, for me, presents a couple of different ideas. Look, I'll try to, piece it. I won't be able to piece the whole movie together for you, so it would be better if you'd see the movie. But, another idea in the movie, or at least something that just happened in the movie. You make of it what you will. The little girl, Flora, the two children, their names are Flora and Miles. Even good names, yes, Flora and Miles. Little girl Flora is saying her prayers before she goes to bed, and she says to the governess something like, if I say my prayers, will I go to heaven? And the governess says, yes, you're a good girl, you will go to heaven. And the little girl surprisingly says to the governess, but what if I'm not a good girl? What if I'm really not a good girl? Wouldn't God just leave me around to walk around? And the governess is surprised by this comment because, she's like, yeah, you should go to heaven. But the little girl knows that she is not really, because see, this movie is essentially, I should have said this at the start, this movie, of course, is essentially about possession. The children are possessed, she says at some point. The realization the children are possessed. Because this movie is about possession. It's about spirits. It's about, not being able to see the truth, I would say. Yeah, because, there is what I'd only learnt this over 6 months ago, this common statement called cognitive dissidence, or what I'd say cognitive distance, or a distance from seeing the truth or the reality or what's in front of you even. Distancing yourself, the cognitive dissidence, the senses and the things that we believe to be true. In other words, what you see, but the cognitive dissidence. If something doesn't align with what you have believed to be true, with what your senses would normally tell you, the mind, with people that don't have imagination, or those that suffer from cognitive dissidence, which is most people, including myself, up until now, it's where you, even if you, in other words, even if you, like, if like, for instance, just wait for the dog to stop banging the drums over there. Cognitive dissidence is essentially, I suppose, where, how seeing is believing, they always say, but with cognitive dissidence, you can see something, but if it doesn't align with what you've previously known, you try to interpret that to fit your reality that you believe to be true. I don't know if I put that very well, probably didn't. But in other words, like for instance, that's why he asked her the question, although he didn't know that his mansion, countryside house where the children were living was inhabited by dark spirits, shall we say. No, he did not know that. So when he asked her, do you have imagination? Good, because truth is seldom understood by any except those that possess or have imagination. He didn't know that is part of the movie, in the sense that when the governess, the main lady in the film, sees the apparition of a dead person in the window, she never does cognitive dissonance. She never says, oh, that must be a reflection. I must be dreaming. Oh, I must be hallucinating. Maybe I'm not well. Looking for a logical explanation. She knows that what she sees is true because she has imagination. She doesn't suffer from cognitive dissonance, as most in the movie, even though really there's only 3 characters in a way in this movie. The other housekeeper features reasonably prominently in the movie. She does suffer from cognitive dissonance. She chooses to suffer from cognitive dissonance because otherwise, everything, she's occasionally hears things or is, she's not able to see the same things that the governess sees because she suffers from I say chosen, almost common sense cognitive dissonance, because she knows that it's a protection. In a way, she's kind of wise because it keeps her it keeps her, she's almost wise to do it in this film. Usually, cognitive dissidence is probably not wise because it is an unacceptance of seeing what is part of the reality. If you see a ghost and you deny its existence because you don't believe in ghosts and you don't think that ghosts can possibly be real, so therefore you will look for a logical explanation. You'll dismiss it somehow. You'll find some way to dismiss what you saw. Now, sometimes this can be, if you want to stay living safely in the Matrix or safely living in Earth, like the housekeeper did, and not, in her case though, if you see the movie, I would say it's a good movie to see, regardless of whether you believe in matrices or natural worlds or don't believe in anything. So it's still, so I have no problem talking about this movie either way, whereas sometimes I would say some movies may not be as good as the points that are in them. Like I could use some other movies to make points about what I think are the fairy tales of this reality or the reality of the fairy tales, but the movies may not be, a perfect movie, shall we say, whereas this movie is a very, very, very good movie, regardless of whether you take it at a superficial level or say that there are potential possibilities in it. But either way, I've rambled here and losing it again. The housekeeper suffered from what I would describe, as most people do, cognitive dissidence. She didn't think it was wise to look beyond the physical. She didn't think it was wise in the reality to question the reality that the two children were possessed. And even when the governess says to her, look, the children are possessed, she's almost surprised herself. The children are possessed because I have seen the spirits. I have seen the two dead people, the governess that was before me, only died under mysterious circumstances.